your time to connect with the material. It's not this thing of pounding it in there, smashing it down, seeing how, you know, how hard you can compress that. This is not rammed earth. This is not, you know, this is a really lightweight, and the more we're able to connect with that, the more we can get that insulative value out of the material. And also I've noticed when we do a lot of the block exercises, people just kind of like really they're there for like 10 minutes just on this one little block, just seeing how much they can compress into that block. What I found actually is it doesn't cure very well, because you're making it so dense that the moisture really struggles to find its way out. So it's really important to be kind of strategic with it. Understand that the outer layers, like we said, the outer layers that are facing, you know, that are going to be the outside of your wall, or where you really want to do the most compaction. The inner part is going to be where we get the most of our insulative value. So we really don't want to compact that too much. We just kind of want to press it a little bit so it just holds its form. And this is just a really good opportunity to see that in action. One thing that we typically do, obviously we haven't got the nails in here with the discs, and we haven't got anything like that, and we don't have any wood in here to represent the 2x4s. And what we normally do is we paint the lime onto the wood before we put the hempcrete in there. This is really just an exercise to show you the tamping, so don't think about it anything other than that. So, you know, what I want to show you first is a lot of time what people do, they come and they bring their bucket and then just like they're whacking their bucket in there like this. You know, and then they start tamping. You see down the bottom here, it's really not kind of getting a lot of tamping. It's not getting compressed a lot at the bottom. Kind of like there's a resistance that happens. So this isn't able to push down into these little spaces down here because you got too much material. So, and you know, and I think we went through this yesterday. So it's really important to start with less material, maybe a couple of inches, and kind of spread it around. And that can, and you can see the difference already, right? Between this here and that. So it's really important, just, I mean, and feel free to come and have a look. Really important just to take it slow, go layer by layer, a couple of inches at a time. But the tamping tools, it definitely makes it easier in the sense when you're going in, you know, you've got a really important. The corners are kind of the spot that you don't think to go in. I don't know. It's just, why would you? But it's, you know, that's why I like using my finger. If you use a tool like a tamp, you don't need to be like, you know, smashing the living daylights out of that thing. You'll be here for a week and you'll have no insulative value in your wall at all. Well, you will, but what's that?
Or a shoulder.
Or shoulder, yeah, exactly. You know, and then the middle, you really all you need to do is just put a bit of weight on it, use your body weight a bit, just kind of fix it in place. So you know, what you kind of visually want to see is when you put that layer of hempcrete in, if you want to have a look here, if you want to come check it out, is that the middle bit is like a key, almost. Like the middle section, come check it out. It's important just to visually see it. It's that you don't want it to be flush. You don't want the whole thing to be flat. You know what I mean? that middle section, when you put it in, should be flat, and then once you tamp the edges and compress, once you've had a look, maybe walk past so someone else can come check it out. It's kind of, you know, it's your time to connect with the material. It's not this thing of pounding it in there, smashing it down, seeing how, you know, how hard you can compress that. This is not rammed earth. This is not, you know, this is a really lightweight, and the more we're able to connect with that, the more we can get that insulative value out of the material. And also I've noticed when we do a lot of the block exercises, people just kind of like really just, they're there for like 10 minutes just on this one little block, just seeing how much they can compress into that block. What I found actually is it doesn't cure very well, because you're making it so dense that the moisture really struggles to find its way out. So it's really important to be kind of strategic with it. Understand that the outer layers, I think we said, the outer layers that are facing, you know, that are going to be the outside of your wall, or where you really want to do the most compaction. The inner part is going to be where we get the most of our insulative value. So we really don't want to compact that too much. Is a lot of time what people do, they come and they bring their bucket and then just like they're whacking their bucket in there like this. You know, and then they start tamping. You see down the bottom here, it's really not kind of getting a lot of tamping. It's not getting compressed a lot at the bottom. Kind of like there's a resistance that happens. So this isn't able to push down into these little spaces down here because you got too much material. So, and you know, and I think we went through this yesterday. So it's really important to start with less material. Free to come and have a look. Really important just to take it slow, go layer by layer, a couple of inches at a time. It's already getting a little misty up here.
What are you using? A specific tool, word, like, or just?
I'll show that. Yeah, I'll show you that. Me personally, I like to use my hand. I just like to feel it. There's something about feeling it, and I can change the shape of my hand pretty easily. I can make a point. I can use a finger to get into a corner. I can use my fist. I can use the palm of my hand. My finger, if you use a tool, like a tamping stick, you can make your own tools. They can definitely be a nice way to just run that down the edge, you know. And probably a lot of you'll want to use a tool, just in kind of a lot easier way of working with it. And then kind of go around the edges. You don't need to be like, visually want to see is when you put that layer of hemp-crepe in, a couple of inches thick, not like 4 inches, 6 inches, just you know, a couple of inches. If you're not sure what an inch looks like, there's tape measures here. Go check them out. We're not doing 16 stain, don't worry. Is that the middle bit is like a key, almost. Like the middle section. Come check it out. It's important just to visually see it. It's that you don't want it to be flush. You don't want the whole thing to be flat. You know what I mean? That middle section, when you put it in, should be flat, and then once you tamp the edges and compress, once you've had a look, maybe walk past so someone else can come check it out.
So it's got almost a completely different density.
Yeah. And you want to, like, you know, you don't want to, one thing that tends to happen, people will people kind of dump a load in, and then they start tamping straight away.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? They kind of dump it in, and you know, maybe there's like, you know, they're throwing it in. They don't really lay it out properly, you know, and then they're starting to do their tamping. But it just starts to get uneven. It just starts to kind of not have a consistency, and then it's really hard mentally to see where you've already tamped, where you haven't tamped. But when you go in there and you make, first thing you do is when you put it in, you kind of lay it all out flat, so it's kind of really even across the cavity that you're trying to fill. Then once you've tamped an area, you can really tell that you've done that area, because what will tend to happen, you'll get distracted, you know. Someone will be like, hey, can you pass me that, or can you come and do this, or something like that, and you come back and or someone else, even worse, what happens more often is actually someone else comes into your area, you know. Someone else starts, they're like, come throw some hemp in there, and you haven't finished tamping. All of a sudden you've got another 3-4 inches of hemp or something in the space. Someone else is coming in on top of you, and they're not aware that you didn't finish. So you really need to like own your spot. Don't just be like, oh yeah, that's more fun over there, or it's lunchtime over here, or whatever. Even your phone goes off. Just like really own what you're doing. Go around, get the edges, and I'm not like putting a lot of force. I'm not, you know. I'd feel that. Maybe that's why I got a shoulder injury. It's reminding me to. Maybe we can we screw through the glass?
Yeah.
See your plastic? And you can use like a linseed oil or something like that to seal it.
I did wanted to ask you about linseed oil, because that's the one that you said in Switzerland they used to seal it. And linseed oil is also breathable? Oh.
Yeah, it's not a...
Wait, linseed oil is breathable?
Yeah, it's vapor permeable. You see what's happening here?
Yep. It's like you need a tool that could come down and shoot across that you could tap as best you could.
Right.
And then you'd have to push it from the outside toward
your weak spot. So you just, before you start filling up, when you can't get your hand in there because it's all on a certain level, you want to just come in and fill that in first. Kind of push it from the side until it's flush on the inside here. You know, it's like these outlets, these little triangular spaces here underneath the pipes. Stuff to be, you know, almost in line with the top of the form, so you're not reaching down and trying to get to it, but we can like really address it slowly, coming in from the outside, and then we can carry on and lay our hemp out. But it's definitely an art. I mean, you know, this is a wall infill system, and we're gonna plaster it in the end, so there is some forgiveness. You know, we can come in with the plaster, we can add even like a finer hemp. We can grind it down into a finer hemp and mix that with the plaster. See, and it's like with just a lime plaster, you could maybe build it up in a few layers maybe an inch, you know, in a few layers, kind of like the first 1/4 inch dry, and then you can build up another one. But if you have like a bigger cavity, maybe that's 3 or 4 inches deep, you can use a mix with the lime plaster and with some hemp hurd in there, like kind of like the smaller fines, the smaller pieces, and then you can build up your plaster a little bit more and get.
I wasn't able to see how you packed it underneath the wood.
Yeah, we got it.
So have like a spray bottle, like a little water spray bottle, and you just want to make sure that that's not, you know, like the edges will start to kind of dry out quicker in some areas. So just spray it and have it so it looks, you want it to keep it looking like the same pretty much all the way, and then it'll slowly just start to all cure together. So you don't necessarily need to do it every day. If you're in a dry environment, then it tends to dry really fast on the outside and the inside's not curing very fast. So
It's so springy. I need to see that.
right.
This is like, I mean, this, even with this tool, it reminds me of making rice cake.
Yeah.
Pretty simple stuff, but easy to forget a step in the process. So we have 4 ingredients in this mix. Obviously, the first is the hemp hurd itself, which is our primary ingredient, and then we have hydrated lime. In this case, this is a high calcium lime, type N, and then we have our pozzolan binder, around a 6 to 7 pound bag of binder, and we have water, H2O. Really important to have clean water in this process, because you have a lot of water with mineralized water or something like that, it's going to have an effect on how that calcium sets up. And so try and find a clean water source. I've done a project before where we had to use living water from a stream because the client hadn't followed the instructions to have water source, so we had an issue with the hempcrete actually setting up properly. So it didn't really set up well because we had too much living matter in there, which is obviously not good for the mix. And so, as you mentioned yesterday, this is our hempcrete mixer. In this case, this is the Motorman 750 by Imer. This is a big boy in the hemp mixing business. This is really a motor mixing machine and mixes around 18 cubic feet of mix in here. The machine's around 1,500 pounds of weight capacity itself. Really important to get it level on the ground before you start mixing. That's going to affect the ability for the mix to be, you know, kind of spread out evenly through the mix. If it's leaning too much to one side, then you're going to end up with kind of the moisture, the liquid, kind of flowing to one area and pooling up, and that's not going to be evenly distributed in the mix. And the proportions of the mix are 44 pounds of hemp hurd, or hemp shiv as it's called. We really want to make sure that we check our hemp before we do that. Make sure there's no large chunks in there. You know, pieces like this, they're a little bit longer than we like, but it's really brittle and it breaks up really easy, so it's not going to be an issue for the mixing machine. But when you start getting into pieces that look like a little finger or something, that's going to be really detrimental to your mixer. It's going to get jammed up and start jamming up your paddles, and you could get a break, which is going to be really expensive to fix. And also when it comes to in the wall itself, it's going to be hard to get that to bind together with the smaller particles, so you're going to have a weak point. We want the hemp hurd to be as dust free as possible as well, because the dust is going to take a lot of your hydration, a lot of your water, and that's going to make it more challenging in the mix. You'll have to kind of play it by kind of you know, test it by hand. And also the fiber as well. You want to make sure there's very, very little fiber in there,
has the same effect as the dust. It's going to clump up with the lime and start making little clumps of lime, which is not going to equally disperse throughout the mix. But this is a really nice hemp herd. Happy about that. You also want to make sure your lime is kind of without the rocks, because them little rocks are not getting hydrated, and that can be an issue for things setting up as well, for things curing. So we want 44 pounds of hemp herd. We want, and that's a ratio that kind of works with a standard bag of lime. So a standard bag of lime is typically 50 pounds. And then the binder is around 6 or 7 pounds. There is some other products on the market that they make the lime and the binder already mixed together. It's a hydraulic lime basically. That comes in a 55 pound bag, so it still works with the same ratios, the 44 pounds a herd. Approximately 11 gallons of water in that mix. And the water is a guide. The ultimate guide is your hand test, which we talked about yesterday, where the mix is sticking together enough, but when you bounce it on your hand after half a dozen times, it starts to break up. If it's not breaking up, it means it's too wet, and it's not going to create that aeration in between the pieces of hemp, which is going to kind of have an effect on your insulative value, your R value of the materials. So our machine's pretty clean. Always make sure at first that there's no foreign objects in there, little pieces of lime that have been left over from the last job or something. Tends to be like little rocks. You don't want that in your mix. So this is looking pretty clean. Recommend having a power washer. Makes it a lot easier work than hand trying to get in there and clean it out and pick all the pieces out. It's looking pretty good. Lift this up. Coming off the herd, a little more than we like. Stay away from the mixer. Alright, so we have 11 gallons in the mix. So we're going to hydrate the hemp herd first. Helps to take the dust out, but also kind of creates the surface for the lime to bond to. So we want to put about 2.75 liters in. Gallons. Gonna take our time. Don't just go throwing the whole thing in at once. Put this in slowly. Yep. It's advisable to wear goggles.
You know, on top of his head.
Yeah, it's like, where are they?
Where are my glasses?
We're going to try not to get it on the center. Try and keep it around this edge so we don't have to deal with all the lime on that middle section there. Actually the wind's blowing this way from there. write this down so we know the ratios and how to put it in. We'll stick that to the mixer.
What are you gonna do after this? Are you gonna use this hemp building stuff for some project, or?
Yeah, it was like the first girl.
Hopefully just educate people so we can move our nation and peoples in a good, better direction.
Kind of like,
Yeah,
don't get me wrong,
yeah.
but like any young girl, like
Remove the stigma
making their best
of
on their future, and like
the hemp.
they're like, she was like, yeah, you're, I really did. I don't think you're the horse I'm gonna bet on.
Reap the benefits
For my
in the Lord's
future, I don't know.
That just sealed it.
Some people think it's getting certified, but it's hard to like be like, dude, calm down, like, you know, don't perpetuate the craziness. Yeah, but you know, hey, you gotta give it a shot. That's better to have known than not to have known. I think that's what it is.
Yeah.
Sure.
That's the oil. Yeah. Come off the potatoes. Shit's on fire.
We're here, Ted. Thank you, Ted. You're the man.
You're the man.
20.
This is Jared, the chef extraordinaire. Oh, I can't even, you're probably not even coming in, but oh well. He's there.
Where do you live?
We watched enough videos on people regretting it and thought they wanted one.
Yeah.
And they would end up in the hospital, and then they go down that thing where they're like, oh well, let's like monitor, and then like, okay, well, then let's do this, let's do that.
Here at Roy's Pecan Palace and Lumber Mill.
This is regular.
I've been in the pecan business 25 years, and I've been in the lumber business 11 years. We bought this building in 2011 and put the sawmills and the kilns in at that time. Not to do that, we actually bought the building to put our pecan business in because our orchards were coming into play. Predators as controls instead of chemicals. That'd be my guess of what you want to hear. Is that right? Yes. That's good, because that's what I'm going to talk about. if you wanted to talk about helicopters, invasive plants, wild oats, it's whatever wants to grow there. It's fine with me, because what we're doing is we're harvesting sunlight. In agriculture, you want to harvest the sunlight. There's the energy. The photosynthesis converts the energy into sugars and matter and root exudates and all that kind of stuff that goes down into the soil, okay? And those root exudates then feed microbiology in the soil and small organisms like protozoa and nematodes and things like that. And then they have a symbiotic relationship with the plant, so the plant gives them energy, they give the plant nutrients. The more sunlight you harvest, the better off you are. Okay? So that's regenerative step number one in my book is ground cover. You'll hear that everywhere you read about it. Okay? Bathhouse, there's 3 chambers in there. All of these bathhouses will hold about 100 baths. Okay? Oil is 13 and butter is 66. So you take butter out of your diet, put pecan oil in there, and you're doing yourself a big favor. Okay? Next. It is to be kiln dry. It shrinks it in the thickness the most. You want that done before you build furniture. If you build furniture out of wet wood, it's going to shrink and it's going to change everything. It shrinks it. It makes it stiffer, just like a dead branch is stiffer than a green branch. It makes it lighter because it doesn't have the water in it. It kills any bugs and larvae that live in it, and it also makes it where it'll hold a finish. If you put a finish on some woods that are wet, it'll turn white, peel off. Okay, so you want your wood kiln dried. Next. That's what it looks like in there. We put these are called stickers. Don't ever buy. Probably the smallest, not too much smaller than a Kansas, but natives are the root genetics of all of this. Very important we save our river bottom native pecan bottoms, because this is where all the genetics came from. It's where the next generation of genetics is coming from, and we haven't even begun to understand all the genetics that are going on in the native populations. Besides the fact they support all these other things like the bats and all the wildlife.
I have a question for you, really quick.
Okay.
So, if these...
Yeah.
But it doesn't matter. If you plant any of these and it grows, it will take about 12 years or 15 years before it makes a nut. But that's not how you do it, unless you want to grow native trees. What you do is you let them grow and then you graft them. And when you graft them, which I could spend the rest of the day talking about, we're not a couple of natives, so I can show you, because we haven't harvested those yet. But this is a hybrid called a Kansas. Now this one I'm going to hand to somebody to eat. So you take the ends off. See that you can see the two halves on this end.
Yeah.
You see that? You can't see it on this end. It's more confusing on this end. But on this end you can see the two halves. The piece of wood that goes between the two halves is called the separator cork. You don't want to eat that. It tastes terrible. Okay? So you find your separator cork and you take this cracker and you go 90 degrees to it.
Yeah.
Like this. You go 90 degrees to it like this, and you take the side off. So now, heck, see that? That's not caused by worms, that's caused by a fungus, and you can't tell if a cypress tree is pecky until it falls down and you cut it, and then you can see the Swiss cheese. The bats fly in here and go up in there. These grooves are so they can land and hold on. Their biggest concern is when a bat lands right here, his biggest concern is to get up in there before an owl or a hawk picks him off. Because that's when they transition from being moving to not moving, and the hawks and the owls know that. And I'll see hawks and owls sitting around sometimes, okay? So they gotta have a way to grab on and get up in there. I've also seen them come in and out of the vent, okay? And so here's the... Okay, so we cut big stuff, as you can see. In the wood world, now we're not talking about pecan nuts anymore, but we're mostly talking about pecan wood. Most of this is pecan wood, although I do have mesquite and cypress and live oak in here as well, and also some cedar in it. But most of it's pecan. Most of the really big stuff is pecan. So those are giant pecans, and so you say, well, who buys something like that? Okay. So that's a log this tall, laying on the ground. It'll cut that big. This is an electric saw. It's 3-phase 480, a WM1000. My other one is a little, or what we call our little saw, is a 85 horse diesel, and it'll cut up to 30 inches. And then out here in the field, you can see we can cut any configuration. We can cut cross sections. See there's big stumps. We can cut big slabs. We can cut lumber. Just about any shape you want, if the log will produce it. It goes into those kilns. The small kiln holds 10,000 board feet, and the big kiln holds 14,000. We end at 145 degrees Fahrenheit 3 months later, and we're trying to get the wood moisture content down below 11%. Wood naturally stabilizes at 11 or 12% in this environment. If you drive down to 6 or 7%, you're wasting energy and time, because it's going to come back to 11% just sitting out. Okay? But you don't want to make wood out of stuff that's 15 or 20 or 30% moisture content. You don't want to do that. Okay? Into a big shelling plant, a big commercial shelling plant, you would have these machines in banks of 40 or 50 where they can do 500,000 pounds a day. Stuff like that. Okay? But for the little guy, this is pretty much state of the art. And so what happens is outside we have a sanitizing machine that we built, and to sell pecans to the public, you have to sanitize it with chlorine. Okay, and that's okay. It doesn't get into that. But anyway, it goes up and comes down through here and falls into this cracker. These have all been sanitized. These are caddo.
Pretty.
You can tell they're caddo because they got point on both ends. A lot of pecans are round on one end. Caddo's got a point on both ends. And I already knew what it was anyway. Okay, but small then the pecans come into this elevator, fall into here. This sizes them out. The big ones will come out down here. Then we pick this up, go into this machine. This is a computer sorter. It sorts the nut meat by color. If there's a black one or it still has a shell on it, it'll kick it out. Shoots it with air. They're falling down in front of the computer and it's looking at every one of them, and if there's one that doesn't like it, hits it with air and knocks it out. Then it goes to the final inspection table. That's human final inspection over there. Okay, so we'll turn all this on for a minute. It makes a lot of noise. It's not going to hurt you. We're not going to leave it on long. Okay, so you just kind of see what it looks like. If you get over 800 pounds an acre in a man-planted orchard in Central Texas, you're doing good. Get over 1,000, you're doing real good. Okay?
That's sparking. That's why I was doing it 2 hands, yeah.
Hold it down. Exactly the same distance away from the house with that. So we're going to go perpendicular to the house. You run this down there. Get it tight.
So right now, Jared, we're just creating the outside dimension of the...
We're creating our angle of the bed. So see how I can already tell how off we are? Pull it tight.
Yeah.
So you got 2 options. I can move the edge of the bed this direction, or we move the edge of the bed more that way.
That's the outside edge of the bed?
That's the outside edge of the bed.
So if you need to go that
So the first bed.
The first bed. So where do you want the first bed to start? Can it be here? Can it be?
Yeah. That level.
Then your water retention will not be near as good.
Okay, so the leveling is for the water retention.
Yes.
Got it.
All right, so now looks like we're a little over. Omar, did you move this stake at all, or? No. Okay.
And what's this method with the strings and the...
This is a move the there we go. All right, that's it. This is just a, we just want a square corner. So
okay.
I want a square corner because we're going to use this as our measuring point. So now if you got a couple tape, to make the other side of the bed.
I got one here.
So right here, bub.
The reason that
those are cold. If you just want to sit there with the wind, it's just colder and colder. So you want to get kind of take care of that. You know?
What is that?
Those are cold.
Oh, cold.
Yeah, the board is on fire. It's smoking. Like not like a flame, but it's just like slowly burning out. Like, after 30 minutes, it's like those 2-inch screws. Those.
the 2-inch.
Yeah.
You want them?
Yeah.
Okay.
If they're 2.5, they're too long. If we have to go to the camp.
Yes, sorry. These are 2.5.
Okay.
4 foot by.
All right, so that's gonna hold the bed right
9
there.
9.5 plus
We're
9
basically gonna
1/2.
screw to it, so it can't go anywhere.
20 feet. I'm just trying to make it level.
This may work.
Go at an angle.
Yeah, cool.
Alright, just checking on the edge is straight. It's a straight place. Just doing 4 footers for the footing for the ends. 1, 2, 3, 4.
If you're gonna plant like this, that's keep it out of, you know. You can do it in buckets, you can like that, or you can do it in a skinny box. Like hey, when you get a set, we're gonna bolt this up. Group that. Yeah.
Lift a little bit for me.
And we're priming the structure to receive the hemp, and it's really important to get a good binding surface for the hemp to kind of fix to. Obviously we added the nails with the discs, we added our horizontal pieces, and it's all really about keeping that hemp fixed into in between the framing. When we encapsulate the frame completely, both sides, let's say we have 3 or 4 inches either side of the hemp of the frame, there's less need to do that inevitably. But what I also find happens if we don't prime the frame, the wood starts absorbing the moisture in the hemp, starts to soak it up, and that actually affects our curing because it dries it out a bit too much. So what we like to do is get like a nice soupy lime mix, and then we just get a little slap happy. We need to be careful around the boxes. We really don't want to have lime sitting in our electrical boxes. Obviously when we get in there, you don't need to paint this. Do not paint the plywood generally, because we want to take it off, and I don't want it to bind to the plywood. So we really want to focus on everything that's going to be staying in the wall. So you get it on here, you can get it on the face. Don't need to get it on the inside face because there's nothing going to bind to that. This we're going to take off, so we don't need any binder on this piece. These forms we're going to take off also, so we don't want it to bind onto here. We actually do want to do it So it's really about the wood, and what that's going to do to our mix is kind of a delicate balance, because we don't want the mix too wet, but at the same time we want it wet enough. So if we're drawing a lot of moisture out in the wood, that's going to affect our ability for the material to set up and have that reaction with the lime and the pozzolans, which create that cementitious reaction, which makes it go back to calcification, goes back to a stone-like state. And we talk more about that. We talked about that with the siliceous, the silicas that are in the binders, which create that cementitious reaction with the lime. So Dane's prepared some lovely lime soup. Like a cement, type of cement.
Like draws it in.
Yeah, just like anything that's dry. Good. A little bit there. Now when I take that foam off, you're gonna see that I had some like really challenging corners down here. I can't get a poker in there or anything. So I just want to take a little bit, just kind of get it in that back, and just kind of work a little bit in.
My watch is saying first hemp goes in 1444.
Get it in there, and then I've got this corner like way up here. It's even hard to get in there. Now I'm just gonna take a little bit and start kind of pushing it up into that space, right? Like this. What do you think might be the challenge we have here?
Get in there.
Get in there.
That piece of wood there is gonna make it really challenging for somebody to work in that space. So I would probably bring it down here, something like that, and then you can really get in there without too much issue to get into these corners, you know. And there's not to say you can't even, you could start even lower if you wanted to. I would definitely not want to be doing it an inch or two at a time, because every time you move that foam, it does like lift the top of your hemp-crepe. As you're moving it, it's kind of that top bit that's not really got anything weight on it. It wants to lift, and then you got to deal with pushing that back down. So you probably want around a foot of, you know, being able to get the material in there, compress that in, and then remove the foam and move it into the next position. So let's go with that metric and put it in for the foot. With this one, you know, they move fast actually. They move fast, and they just have it kind of figured out, you know. So I'm just spending a little bit of time just making sure it's all in there and level, and then I would just go on them back edges. Do them first. Do my edges first. You know, like you did when you're doing the little thing. Let me use this.
Yeah, so it's running.
Okay.
It's rolling.
Okay, cool. Yeah. Go time.
Ted actually is doing some work. Yes, I have to prove it. So we're doing hemping, putting on our nice even layer, making it level, and getting all the edges. Anyway, this is a speeded up version. I'm going to use the tamper. So we started from about here. We got about like foot or 2 feet down so far. Those Delilahs. We're all down the line. Nice.
Got some other hemp. Have a
Oh,
little
it's
look.
time to take it off?
Yeah.
So we just go slowly out with it.
Yes, I know. I'm a little nervous.
Oh my gosh. This is our area.
I know. So let's see how Ted Delilah did.
And then pop that one out.
Time to remove the foam board.
Yeah.
Cross your fingers, everyone.
So we really want to. Holding the weight. Alright, and just gently pull it out. Pull it back.
Ooh. Oh yeah.
Oh, how funny! I did a knot. Did you see the gap? Look,
This is
the notch.
interesting. Up on the notch?
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Did what?
The knot.
There's a spot sticking out
You
because
see
the
the
knot
spot
in the
sticking out in the
wood.
knot.
Oh, the knot in the wood.
Oh yeah, that
Yeah.
little spot right there.
Got 'em.
Okay.
Wow. I think we
Yeah, you
did
got to have the
that.
surface of the wood you're doing it against nice too.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
Okay.
A little bit lower. And 2 more touches lower. 1 more touch. It's pretty good right there. Maybe a half a touch more.
Tiny touch more. Back it out. Bam. Triangle.
You gotta wait for the big break.
Oh, okay.